Alright, sorry guys. I pressed the wrong button and my video cut off. I got to save everything that I've said before all of this, but hopefully got you guys watched the other video and decided to watch the part two because now I'm gonna have to, upload it separately. I don't have a way to mend the two videos together so that it's all in one place. But hopefully you guys decided to come see the second part of the video. So congratulations, you decided to listen to me talk for longer. All right, so I left off talking about Ein Sof, Ein Sof Or, and the manifestations going down to Kether, and then Kether being the universe itself, all of physicality. So physicality would incorporate space and time and the laws of reality, which be physics and chemistry. And I'm assuming there's more laws here and there when we really get into the nitty gritty of the science. But, I am more of an esotericist. I am aware of science, but I am not a scientist. So if you really want the scientific stuff, then obviously talk to a scientist. But if you want the esoteric understanding of it, then you would have to listen to someone like me because scientists don't really like to mystify things. They kind of want to like just say no, bro. You know, that's just some boo hockey. But whatever, neither here nor there. Point is this: so Malkuth is this physical reality, right? Now, something that some people won't tell you is if you're a practitioner of Hermetic Kabbalah or any of these esoteric traditions, there is deeper to go. So if the tree of life is above you, and this is Malkuth, the tree of life is extending upwards, and then we have the four worlds. So there's four worlds. So there, the tree of life, and then there's another tree of life, and another tree of life, and another tree of life, until you get all four worlds. Actually, let me. I got my little thingy here because I forget the names. So okay, so we would have the world of substance, Isia, which is earth, bull, Torah, form. So this would be the bottom level. And above that would be Yitzhara. Yitzhara, which is represents air, moon, smell, activity. And above that would be the world of creation, Bria, which represents water, eagle, healing, hearing, and patterns. And then all the way at the top, the world of emanations, which is Atzilut, which represents fire, lion, sight, and archetypal, right? So all the way at the top, we have the fire element, which is when we look at fire, you know that it's there, but it's not necessarily a physical thing. Ignoring the part that you would get burned if you touch the fire. If let's say you could not get burned, you can move your hand through fire. It's not physical, but yet it's still an expression of energy being pushed out or whatever. So fire would be the highest level of the four worlds, the tree of life, and then above that would be Ein Sof Or, and then above that Ein Sof, and then Ein Sof, and then Ein, which is complete nothingness. But then we have the downward trajectory, which some people would say the inverted tree of life, or the inverted tree of, or the tree of death. But I like to imagine the inverted tree more as a root system, where the tree of life is above, and beneath it lies the roots, which is labeled as the Sephiroth of this root system would be the husks. So this is the tree of Qliphoth, and um, working with this particular tree and going through this level of understanding would be akin to shadow work. You're engaging with the shadow aspects of all of these Sephiroth from the Tree of Life. You're working with these husks, which is um, like shattered shells, like shattered vessels. Um, but no matter how far something is from from the origin, from the source, everything is divine. So these aspects, these things are still divine. They're just the farthest things from the divine. Um, but to truly ascend, you have to descend. Every descent is an ascension. You have to go through these things also to understand the fullness of existence and reality. You have to face your shadow. You have to face the abyss. And when it stares back into you, you can't blink. You have to be present and understand I know what you are, and you are me, and I understand that. And you have to reintegrate these components of the self, these shadow aspects, these primal parts of yourself, the parts of yourself that you hide from yourself, that you deny are a part of you because shame, guilt, fear, um, denial, these are all of these components that most of us shy away from, but it's a part of existence and you have to understand these things. But these are not really, this is not really a part of me trying to explain all of this stuff from a more philosophical and scientific point of view. This is more of uh, a psychological thing, right? So when you work with the Tree of Qliphoth, what you're doing is more of a spiritual, mystical, psychological type thing, where it's kind of like Carl Jung when he wrote the Red Book, right? It's like looking at your reflection, and this reflection that you're engaging with is like the devil in you, the devil side of you. All right, so let's move on. Um, so now, let's say that you've worked through all these things and you understand fully what I've been talking about in the last video and this video. In Neoplatonism, we also have this idea of theurgy, which is ritual practice to unite the soul with the divine. Now, there is another word that I can't for the life of me remember, which is kind of like theurgy, but in reverse, where instead of trying to unite your soul with the divine and uplift you and go up to God, you actually bring God down from the heavens into you within the physical world. So some people would say that when Jesus performed miracles, he was drawing God down into his body, into the physical form, with the intention of creating miracles, doing something that only God can do. All right, hold up. All right. Okay. So yeah. So that's the theurgy. And we're going to get deeper into these things, on how to perform, how to do. But honestly, theurgy can be done in so many different ways. The Neoplatonists have their method, but it's not necessary to do it in this one way. Ultimately, theurgy, from my perspective, would be fully actualizing non dualism within your psyche to a point that it's no longer an intellectual or no longer a knowledge based thing where it's like, yeah, non dualism, me and God are one. You're just saying it, and you might even believe it, but you're not experiencing it. So Theurgy is more of non-dualism on a deep psychological level, where not only are you saying it and you understand it intellectually, you understand it philosophically, you know this thing, but also you are experiencing the effects of being one with God, where to the point where um you're experiencing a reality where you and God are actually one. So you are able to see things that others can't, hear things that others can't, even smell and taste and feel things that others can't. And that actually makes me want to diverge a little bit and talk about visualization, because many people practice visualization and they're only practicing one aspect of it, because the word is visualization. So we're talking specifically about visuals. But in a true sense of visualization is to use imagination to actualize something within your psyche to the point that you can experience it with your senses. So this is not just visual. For instance, when I engage with spirits, I can enter this state of visualization to give them form so that I can experience them in a more realer sense. And sometimes it's not a visual thing that I pick up. I might feel a presence in the room or a hand on my shoulder and feel the pressure of the hand touching me. I might smell something. Like I've worked with certain demons where the whole room had the smell of like very rich soil, right? You might taste something or so on. Like I've mentioned before, I had one experience where I was engaging with a god. From my perspective, this was the highest form of God in a non the highest form of God as a manifestation, and it kissed me. And at first, my mouth filled up with the uh, taste of sweetness, where to the point that my mouth was watering of how sweet everything tasted. And then in a split second, it changed to the taste of blood. And to me, something that I say, I have a song that I created where I mention this. I've actually mentioned this before, where I tell people rejoice and mourn, because that's the nature of reality. Rejoice and mourn, order and chaos, peace and havoc. In my song, what was it that I said, and this is the divine comedy, and it's tragic. Rejoice and mourn, peace and havoc. Whatever. Point is that this kiss was something that allowed me to understand that this point of view I had was accurate. That ultimately the nature of existence is rejoice and mourn. That's just how things are. You know. And I could get deeper into that philosophically, but I don't want to do that right now because it's not computing in a way where I feel it would do justice to the topic. So when it comes to me, I'll explain that a little further. But yeah, okay, let's move on. So that would be theurgy, and if you guys try, okay, so I'll give you some practices. Next time you're doing a visualization, I want you to visualize something that has sound and odor and taste. So I will ask you to visualize fire. So I want you to sit down and meditate, and I want you to close your eyes and visualize fire and continue visualizing it until it's vivid in your mind. We're not looking for a complete and total trance, although that would be preferable. We're not looking for a complete and total trance where you're completely like in the moment and you're seeing the fire. No, like let's start small, and if you get there, awesome. But first visualize the fire. The second that you have the image of fire in your eyes and you can see the fire and it's moving and there's these different shades of red and orange and yellow, and you can see it, Now start to generate the sounds of it. I want you to generate the sounds of crackling wood. That little thing where it's like chipping and popping, where these gases and oils are coming out of the wood and exploding in these tiny little ways. And you can hear it, and you can hear it so vividly. And once you can do that, you're now seeing and hearing the fire. I want you to smell it. I want you to smell the odor of burning wood, of soot and ash. And once you're able to do that, I want you to taste it. Imagine the soot and ash flowing out of this fire, being tossed up into the sky like a fire does, and it's landing on you, and you're tasting the ashes. And either prior to this or because it might be easier to do these things in different orders, so find the order that's most best for you. But finally, I want you to feel the heat. I want you to feel hot, dry air, sort of its presence, because this heat is not like your whole body is on fire. It's more like a hot air flowing over you in a certain direction, from a certain direction, right? So now when you've perfected this, you would be able to imagine fire so vividly that you can see it, hear it, feel it, taste it, and smell it, and continue practicing this until it's second nature. And once you get there, you can use this practice to do the same with anything else, including deities, angels, demons, saints, whatever. All you have to do is find out the associations with that entity, and try to figure out what do they feel like, what do they smell like, what do they taste like, so on and so on. And a lot of times you will find this type of information. For instance, I forget when you're doing the lesser ritual of the pentagram, the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, and you're at that point where you say Mikael to my right. Usually, Mikael is represented by fire. If I am not, I'm hoping I'm getting this right, because I forget a lot of shit because I study too much and my brain can only hold so much. I'm not a brain. I don't got Neuralink yet, so there's no way for me to remember everything. But hopefully I'm getting it right. It might have been Raziel. No, Raphael. Let me see. Fire, water. I think Michael is fire, water, air, soil. Whatever. I'm not gonna get into it because I'm gonna drive myself crazy. The only way I'm gonna remember it is if I look at my notes. Point is, this angel, one of these, the angel is represented by fire, and usually when you're doing this ritual, you will imagine the presence of hot air rushing over you from that direction, and imagining that angel covered in fire, and so on and so on. So you can use this visualization technique so that when you speak that angel and you imagine their properties, you would not only visually imagine that angel in its armor with its sword and fire all around it, you would also smell and taste and hear the fire, giving more weight to the energy around it, more weight to the ritual. And we can do this with so many different things. And why I associate this with theurgy, because when you're trying to ascend and become one with God, visualization is going to be very necessary. Now, a big question that I would have for this practice is, when you are doing theurgy, which God exactly are you uniting with? Are you uniting with Ein Sof, which is infinite potential and nothingness? Or are you uniting with a manifestation like El, yeah, like El. Um, Now, uniting with a manifestation can be beneficial because you can become one with that manifestation and take on some of their properties, characteristics, and so on, and become closer to a God self. Apotheosis, um, deification, so on and so on. Uh, but I tend to want to merge with Ein Sof, which makes this a little different because my visualization would not be adding to the visualization, but instead stripping from the visualization. So rather than visualizing me becoming, I would be visualizing myself unbecoming, unmaking myself. I would, in that process, my visualization would be going in the opposite direction, where I'm stripping myself of attributes. So through that visualization, I would lose my face and body. I would lose my ability to hear and see and smell and taste and touch. I would lose the components of my psyche, of my narrative, who I believe myself to be. I am like this and I am like that. These things start getting stripped, and I start becoming less human, less of a person, less of an individual, to the point that I cross that barrier where I no longer am, and instead there is this emptiness. But at that point, once I cross into it, there's no more awareness. I disappear. Usually I will reappear hours later as if it's only been less than a couple of seconds. I would just reappear and I feel like I was meditating for, maybe 3, 4 minutes, and when it's been multiple hours, right? So you have to decide for yourself, do you want to merge with nothingness, or do you want to merge with a specific um, personification, a specific anthropomorphized version of God, a specific archetype, a specific manifestation, right? A whole bunch of words that pretty much mean the same thing. Just so now, like I said, merging with a manifestation can be beneficial. So it's up to you which direction you want to go, and you don't have to choose just one. You can do both for different purposes. All right, so let me take a second. All right, guys. Okay, so then we have kenosis, which is the goal, the union with the one, right? Now, this is difficult to talk about because if you achieve this, then you're one with unity, you're one with oneness, you are literally one with nothingness. And the best way for me to describe this would be like these monks that go into a deep meditation and just never wake up. Like, I believe there's this mummified monk, and people say that he's still alive, but he looks pretty dead to me, right? But ultimately, what happens is he entered this state of oneness and just never came out. So perhaps his like body just died while he was there. Not like this caused him to die, but maybe he was there, stayed there for so long, and after like multiple years, his body was like, oh, like I haven't drank or ate anything in like 7 years. Let's just die. Like it makes no difference because this guy's never coming back. He's like, he's one with one right now. Like he's just not coming back, right? So whether he died or didn't die, I don't know. But this would kind of be that. Once you merge with oneness and there's no intention to return, you're sort of nothingness forever, I guess. Now, I don't want to say forever because there might be some sort of idea, some sort of concept where you can enter this non-being state and reemerge at a different point in time for whatever purpose or reason or whatever. There might be some sort of situation like that. because at one point there was oneness, there was unity, and somehow the universe emerged from it. So if you was to go back into this oneness and become nothing, the potential to re-enter reality should be there because it happened before. There was a state of oneness, and it expanded, and everything that emerged from it. All manifestations emerged from it. So we know that this state of void, nothingness, and the infinite potential within it has the capability of expanding and becoming manifested. So, going into this nothingness might not be eternal, but we don't actually know. So, if your intention is to stay alive and on this earth, you might want to stay away from trying to achieve this, because we don't actually know if you'll come back, and we don't actually know if you come back, if you would come back into this body. Like, you might just reemerge as a new being a billion years from now. Who the fuck knows, right? And so I would like to draw the distinction between henosis and theurgy, because theurgy is becoming one with God with the intention to merge and return. And when you return, either you became one with nothingness and you reemerge with some sort of something that wasn't there before, right? Something that you got from the infinite potential. But henosis is more of a ultimate goal, and I would prefer to save henosis for my deathbed, so that when I am aware that I will be dying soon for whatever given reason, perhaps I'm in my 80s, 90s, and I'm like, hey, I had enough of this ride, time to get off. I will then enter that state of henosis. And I do not know if I will ever reemerge, but to be honest, I prefer not to. I think existing is a lot of effort, and the reality is that non-being is true bliss, because bliss is absent. So some people would see bliss as bliss because that's what the word means. But where there's bliss, there's the potential for the loss of bliss. There's potential for other things. In nothingness, there is no potential for other things. Technically, infinite potential lies within it, but that infinite potential isn't actualized. It's not manifested yet. So as long as you stay within that nothingness, there is no self, and without no self, it's impossible to suffer. And there's also no pleasure or joy, but without pleasure or joy, there's nothing to chase. So in this state, there's no pain to run from, and there's no joy to run to. You're simply in a state of nothingness, which means you'll just never experience any type of suffering. And that seems awesome to me. I'm just not there yet. That's not something I want to do right now, but ultimately, at the end of my life, I would like to enter that state. All right, let's see what else. Um, I cannot pronounce this word for the life of me. Iambilichus. I am bilichous. Bleachous. I am bleach. It is spelled I am. So I am, and then Blichus. I am bilichous. All right. So now this is, I suppose, a practice of theurgy over philosophy alone. So what this is trying to teach us is philosophically, we can understand many concepts within the Kabbalah, within Tantra, within Neoplatonism, and more modern things like stuff that were taught by the Golden Dawn. The OTO, the AA, Thelema, philosophy, the Rosicrucians, the this and that. Philosophically, we can understand a lot of these things, but to say theurgy over philosophy is to say, instead of understanding something intellectually, to prioritize understanding something on a deeper level that's not tied to intellect, but tied to a direct experience. So when you do theurgy and become one with this entity that you're trying to emerge with, you'll have some sort of experience, and that experience is above any type of knowledge that can be gained with pure study and intellect. So if you're looking for that, this is synonymous with gnosis. So personally, I divide knowledge into two different branches. We have epistemic knowledge, so epistemology, your epistemic knowledge, that which can be argued for, that which could be debated, that which could be explained. So epistemologically, I can explain to you a concept like thermodynamics, and I can explain this concept and show you um uh like not necessarily an experiment per se, but let's say some sort of experiment that's metaphorical, where it's like, all right, so over here, we're okay, a good example, I forgot how this device works, but there's a device that looks like a little bird that goes like this, and it pecks a cup of water. And I think there's something, I might be misremembering this, but there's some sort of element where there's like a candle heating something up, and the heat causes the bird to peck, and the peck causes something else to happen, which keeps it in sort of a loop of movement. And we can see the transition of energy, like heat, like thermodynamics be, like we're seeing heat be created into work, like heat producing work. In science, work would be um energy produces work, so energy causes something to happen, right? So like exactly. So what I'm trying, I really screwed up that explanation because there's just too much things in my head for me to remember exact things, ways to explain everything, especially when it comes to science, because I'm definitely a layman when it comes to that topic. But point is, when it comes to thermodynamics, I am able to explain it to you intellectually and show you things that will convince you. So that's epistemic knowledge. But then we have something deeper called gnosis. Gnosis can only be understood through personal experience. So I explained it to somebody like this. We all know that pigs don't fly, right? Now, let's say you went outside right now and you saw a pig flying. It had wings and it was flying through the sky. That is not epistemic. There is no way for you to ever be able to explain that experience to anybody else in a way where you will convince them, unless they're very loopy and they just believe anything. But logically speaking, there is no way for you to explain that experience where you will convince anybody that it's true. And the only way that the majority of humans would believe that story is if they experienced it for themselves. Right now, the fact in this context, you did see the pig flying. It was an actual pig with wings flying. But within this context, what we're trying to describe is the fact that the only way that you know that pig was flying is because you saw it with your own eyes. If you didn't see it with your own eyes, you would have never believed it. And just like that, there are many things that happen within reality that it is impossible to understand unless you experience it yourself. So another one-to-one comparison would be a specific type of love. So I'm not talking about love in general, but let's say you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend and you feel a specific type of love for that person. Even though other people understand that love exists to some extent, and some people see it from a more emotional standpoint, and some people say, "Oh, these are chemicals, pheromones and oxytocin, and these are chemical responses that causes us to mate and to bond and to so on and so on and so on." So regardless if you see it from a strictly emotional standpoint or from this chemical standpoint, the point is we all understand what love is and we understand that it exists to an extent. We know that we feel this emotion, but the exact emotion, the exact feeling of the emotion that you're having for that specific person is unknowable to anybody other than you because you're the one experiencing it. For the same way, like let's say you and that person break up and you confide in me and talk to me so that I can console you or give you advice, no matter how much I want to understand your feeling, I will never feel the exact pain that you feel losing them because I didn't experience it. And even if I experience the same exact thing with another person, what I experienced is intrinsically different from what you experienced. So that feeling of love you had for that specific person, or that pain that you felt when you lost that person, is unknowable to everybody other than you. And that's gnosis. So when you have a deep, profound experience with God, with deity, with spirits, with something like this, these are things that are gnosis. Only you know this. Only you can understand this. And that's just how it is. So we need to remember that there is this difference between different forms of knowledge. Gnosis can only be understood by the person experiencing it. But epistemic knowledge is something that we can explain and prove to someone that it's true. So when we're looking at epistemic knowledge, we should intend to understand epistemic knowledge from a philosophical, psychological, or scientific perspective. We should be understanding that from those perspectives because we can explain the ideas and thoughts and the train of thought, the way that you're thinking that led you to a specific thing. We can understand the psychology behind it, and we can understand the science, which is the study of physical phenomenon. So if I throw a ball up and it comes back down, we can explain that. We can explain gravity. We can explain, even if we don't fully understand it in its entirety, we can explain enough of it to be able to prove it. And ultimately, if you still don't believe me, I can take the ball and throw it up and let it fall, and you will like see that it's true. So let's remember that there is a distinction between different types of knowledge, and one isn't above the other. A lot of scientists will postulate that gnosis is pretty much nonsense. There's only one truth, and it's science, and that The scientific method is the only method, and anything that can't be proven by science is obviously fake. And there is so much wrong with that conception because there's tons of things like morality, ethics that can only be understood philosophically. And even though this is still epistemic, philosophical understanding and scientific understanding are still different. We need to understand that science has its limitations. Science can only describe physical things and phenomenon. We can only describe this is a thing that exists and it does that thing which causes that thing, right? So science is very important, so we shouldn't be using our spirituality to change science, right? So don't get me twisted. We should always allow science to be what it is. And if the science proves itself to be true, then that should inform our understanding of everything else. We should never take our spirituality and force science to say what we want it to say. But that doesn't mean that we abandon gnosis. Ultimately, there's going to be a very large chunk of reality that can only be understood through gnosis. So, for instance, science can tell me that the moon is there, but gnosis is the only thing that can tell me how I feel when I look at the moon. Gnosis is the only thing that can tell me what I experience when I talk to the moon, right? So, all right, let's move on. All right, guys. So now I want to talk about Pseudo Dionysus, the Arpeggiot, Arpeggiot. I don't know, fucking pigeon. I don't know. I can't pronounce these words. My bad. But Pseudo Dionysus was a dude. He was a Christian. He was walking around in the third century, being like, "Hey, bro, you keep saying what God is. I want to say what God isn't." And that was his whole shtick. And I think that what he developed is a big influence on what Kabbalah became later on. Because, um, let me see if I can pronounce this word correctly. Apophetic theology. Apophetic. I can't pronounce it. My bad. I'm hoping that you can figure out how it's properly pronounced and research it. But apophetic theology, which is his entire way of thinking, is instead of describing by God by what it is, it's by describing God by what it isn't, which is extremely similar to the Hindu teaching of neti neti, which is not this, not this. So I can say God is that, and neti neti, not this, not this. So this is the same thing. So this to like constrict this very tightly, this is just a another way of saying everything I said before, where non-manifesting. Because we can say God is the sun, neti neti, not this, not this. God is the moon, neti neti. God is the ocean, neti neti. God is the sky, neti neti. Blah 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 blah. We can do this all day. And what this ultimately does is it causes us to visualize God from a strict form where we are no longer placing things onto God, which is a big problem because a lot of some of the big problems with modern religions is that uh, the religious people look at God and say God is holy, therefore he must be like me. And this book says these things, and it's not exactly what I believe, but I'm able to interpret it this way. And I'm going to make it say what I want it to say because this is the thing that I believe. And what ends up happening that it all turns into dogma and superstition, and we lose sight of what God truly is. So, from Pseudo-Dionysus' point of view, instead of describing God from what it is, we describe it by saying what it's not. So, the Bible tells us that God is vengeful. Pseudo-Dionysus would say it's not. Neti neti. And Pseudo-Dionysus does not say neti neti. I'm just saying these are intertwined, right? These are the same teachings found in different places at similar times. But I believe Neti Neti was a lot older. Now, this would put us in the perspective where when we say God is jealous, Neti Neti. God is, um, God is this, God does that, Neti Neti. And if we follow this train of thought to its ultimate destination, we would realize that every single thing that we can possibly conceive is not God. Everything that we can possibly describe is not God. Now, this is a paradox because technically, every single thing we can conceive and describe is a manifestation of God. It stems from this source, it comes from that. Everything comes from it. And it being infinite means that every component that came out of it is also infinite because infinity can't be divided. And if infinity can't be divided, if God is the total, the wholeness, and I am a piece of that wholeness, but the wholeness is infinite, then that means I am also infinite. But even though my personal perspective on myself and this space between me and everybody else is an illusion, it's an important illusion because this illusion is what allows me to be an individual. So even though the truth is non-dualism, I still live within a world that is dualistic, and I am an independent, distinct individual that is different and separate from all of you and all of the things around me. So ultimately, this still remains true when I say I am God, neti neti. Although this is a paradox because I am God. I am God because God is the source and I emerged from it. The potential that created me is God. So everything that's a part of me is a piece of God. So I am God. But I am manifested, which means that there's a now, simply by me existing, I am a part of the illusion, which means that in truth, I am not God. The only way for me to truly be God is by losing the title of God and also losing every other aspect, characteristics, trait, everything about me. If I was to completely dissolve into nothingness and not exist anymore, then I would be God. But the second that that happens, the label God disappears as well, and all you can do is say nothing. So, Pseudo Dionysus, I believe, is a grandfather of the teachings that developed into the Kabbalah and their concept of Ein Sof and Ein. And that is cool, but take it as you will. All right, give me another second and I'll see what else to talk about. So, oh, I've got to stretch. Stretch. Oh, God. Okay. Another thing is this teaching of divine darkness. So Pseudo Dionysus talked about divine darkness, which is the union with God through unknowing. Now, we are constantly learning and changing and all of that. But I'm sure that some of you might have experienced this when I say that it is way easier to learn something than it is to unlearn something. Once something is learned and it's really dug deep into your psyche, it's very difficult to unwire that and start. It's very difficult to believe something and then stop believing it. It is literally multiple times harder to stop believing in something than it is to start believing in something. And this idea of divine darkness is telling us that in order to truly unite with God, this unity requires unbecoming. Requires unknowing, to dissolve, to undo, to strip away. And shameless plug, my book Omnia Blasio, which is on Kindle, um, gives you the method of undoing yourself, unmaking yourself, deconstructing the concept of self and the narrative that you've been building about yourself. So, this might be a beneficial book to have because it teaches you how to unmake yourself. But in my particular book, the intention is not to uncreate yourself, unmake yourself with the intention to unify with God, but rather to be able to reverse engineer yourself. It's to unravel all of the wiring in your mind. And as you're unraveling it, become aware of it and its source so that you understand what influences led you to believe or act in that way. And by the end of the process, what you would end up doing is deconstructing yourself and your narrative, becoming aware of all of the internal and external influences that caused that narrative to be to begin with, to acknowledge which parts of this narrative and self conception were beneficial for you and which ones were detrimental for you, to challenge every single component here so that you can pressure test all of these things to truly know if they're beneficial or detrimental for you. And by this, I mean, what are things that actually lead you to achieving your goals and obtaining your desires? And that which is sort of just a placeholder and doesn't actually do anything for you can be tossed away. And when you get to the end of that road and you're completely dismantled, you can now recreate yourself with intentionality and recreate yourself in a way where you're a um, achieving machine. And I don't want to present this as achievement is the all the be all end all. But we are alive. We are on this earth. We are able to do things. You might as well be getting more of the stuff you want and doing more of the stuff you want to do instead of just being completely nihilistic and doing nothing because nothing matters, or being completely absorbed by some ideology, religion, culture to the point where you must this, you must not that, and you're completely beholden to all of these components that aren't your true will. So the true idea of all of this is to strip yourself of everything, and as you're stripping yourself of everything, become aware of every single component and why it was there so that you don't fall into the same traps in the future. And once you start recreating yourself, you recreate yourself in a way that it's ultimately beneficial. So what you're ultimately looking for are components that are going to be that are going to possess utility or aesthetic, because utility is ultimately what's going to get you what you want and going to get you to where you want to be, and is going to get you the ability that you want to have or the achievement that you want to accomplish. But aesthetic is also important because if we lose sight of how we look to the world, we no longer can present ourselves in a way that's understandable and relatable, and we lose the ability to obtain power and influence. In order to have power and influence, you need to be able to understand how you look to the people outside of you. And that doesn't mean to create yourself in a way where you're pleasure seek, where you're approval seeking, where you're creating yourself specifically in a way where these people will accept you, but rather you're creating yourself in a way where you're becoming the way you want to be perceived. So this would mean, let's say for me, I am very into philosophy, so I would like to be perceived as someone that is deep rather than shallow. But I then say, hey, if I am truly deep, then I would be able to explain the fact that there is benefits to the shallow ends of the pool. So then I create this environment, this not environment, but an aura where I am the type of person that will tell you you should explore the shallow ends and the deep ends and understand the difference, understand the line that divides the two, and understand where each one of these have their benefits. If I am going out with a couple of my friends for a couple of drinks, perhaps being super deep isn't that beneficial. I might want to be a little shallow and make a whole bunch of dick jokes. And that's okay, right? Um Now, if I'm at that place drinking with my friends and I make these dick jokes and they laugh, and then they say something and I laugh and we're having a good time, and then a more complex topic comes up and then I interject with a much deeper understanding of it, and they say, whoa, that sounds true, like that sounds like, cool or crazy or blah blah blah. Now I'm creating this in uh atmosphere around myself where I'm the person that can have fun and be like this, but I can also be deep and be like that. And this aesthetic is pleasing to me and also the people around me. And this aesthetic causes me to be in a position where, in this particular case, I'm just having fun. But if I was to present myself this way in a different situation, I might be able to obtain some influence and cause people to believe certain things or act in certain ways. And I'm not Machiavellian, so I'm not doing this with the intention to harm them or to use them. But ultimately, there's still a self gratifying, self pleasing, self um what's the word I'm looking for? Uh Benefiting element to it. Ultimately, if you are the type of person that has influence, you should be using it to benefit the people that are you're influencing. But ultimately, regardless if I benefit them or not, me having influence over them will benefit me. Unless I, you know, convince them to kill me, then all right, whatever, but that's neither here nor there. Ultimately, we need to understand that the majority of our persona needs to be guided towards benefit. It needs to be guided towards utility. It needs to be guided towards that which is going to benefit us in the long run and in the short run. But a part of that is the aesthetic. If you have no aesthetic, you will not be relatable. And regardless how no matter how much utility is in your message, your teaching, in the things you do, without that aesthetic component, people won't want to listen because it just doesn't feel right. It feels robotic. So developing a good aesthetic is very beneficial in the long run. So now, the whole part of what I'm talking about here is that this is my particular way because I have no intention to unify with nothingness just yet, and I'm assuming that you don't want to either. Because Unifying with nothingness right now is synonymous with dying. And I'm assuming that all of you want to continue existing to some extent. So, my position would probably be better for you in the long run because it will allow you to become aware of all of the internal and external influences that have caused you to develop in the way that you are. You will be able to dismantle all of it and create yourself anew in a way that you are guided towards utility and aesthetic with the purpose of utility. And in my book, we talk about things like things that even people that are trying to unravel themselves, they get lost in certain things, believing that this is not the type of thing to get rid of. For instance, some of us get caught up with the idea of worth. So some of us sometimes feel very worthy, and we develop these obnoxious characteristics where I am the chosen one and I have the true knowledge and I am the one that's going to save the world. And you just sound like a fucking tard when people do that type of shit. And I really don't want to offend you because I'm assuming some of you feel this way too. But it's stupid. So stop. All right. Okay, please don't hate me for saying that. But the reality is it's just ridiculous. Like you're telling me out of the thousands of years of people doing shit, you just happen to crack the code and you know how to do the whole matrix thing. And like literally the stuff you're talking about is built on the back of stuff that people have been talking about for centuries, and they didn't save the world, but you're the one, right? You're the chosen one by the people of light, or whatever the hell you want to call like this particular thing. The reality is that the opposite side of that is also shitty, where people convince themselves that they're not worthy. I'm a terrible person. I'm so shitty. I fuck up so often. I do this and I do that, and they're just self pity upon self pity. And both of these aspects are just ridiculous and obsolete when you realize the truth. When you really understand the fullness of unbecoming, you realize that a lot of these things are built just to trap us. Even if you develop some sort of self love and appreciate yourself and see yourself as worthy, then what happens on the day that you fail and you no longer see yourself as worthy, even if it's not permanent? What happens on that day, right? When you're not worthy, where you failed, where you made a mistake, where you screwed something up, like what type of feelings are emerging from you during that aspect, during that time of your life. And the reality is that my book teaches you how to not give a shit. The reality is that whether you're worthy or not just doesn't matter. The point is, do what you want to do. The do thy wilt is the whole of the law. The whole of the law is love. Thy will under law. Thy will under love, like Crowley says, right? Ultimately, whether you're worthy or seen as worthy, or you're unworthy and seen as unworthy, none of that shit matters. What ultimately matters is, are you getting to where you're trying to go? So, if your intention is to obtain a specific desire or to obtain a specific goal, so there's this type of car, I want it, I'm going to enact my will onto reality and cause that thing to come into my life. You fail, who gives a shit? Change up your strategy, try again. If you end up trying many times and you simply can't get that car because you don't want a fucking Honda, you want a Bugatti, and you don't have the type of money to get the Bugatti, then how about just stop wanting a Bugatti and maybe try to get a fucking like a Maserati that's like a fifth of the price? You can't achieve that. All right, how about trying to get a BMW that's half of the price of the Maserati, right? And you just keep adjusting until you can get something similar to what you want or the thing you want, and you just keep adjusting. Because let's be real, setting the goal as getting a Maserati is possible, but unless you have a way to make ridiculous amounts of money, that's probably not going to be in your wheelhouse of possibilities. And I'm not saying don't aim for the stars. I'm just saying if you're making $2,000 a month and your ultimate goal is to get a Maserati, maybe you need to reassess your desires. But the ultimate the ultimate thing here is if you develop yourself, if let's say you're like one of these guys in the manosphere, and you describe and you attribute your worth to your possessions and money, the fact that you failed at getting the Maserati means you're no longer a real man. And developing these types of realities within your minds is just ridiculous, and it's ultimately going to hurt you. So, developing this is just anti-intuitive. It's anti-beneficial. It's the antithesis of benefit, and it just doesn't benefit you. So if what you need is a car, maybe you should look for functionality. All right, something that's low price on gas, economical, blah blah blah. Get a brand new Honda Civic, the model of the year that you're buying it, and what you're gonna spend 20 to 30K on it. You're good. You don't need more than that. Just look for the utility out of the vehicle. If you need something bigger, get some sort of SUV, a truck, blah, blah, blah. Look for the utility. What is it that you actually need the vehicle for? And what type of car can you afford? And blah, blah, blah. And even if you can't afford it now, what is within the wheelhouse of possibilities? I'm currently making $2,000 a year, a month, but I'm capable of doing things to get a better job, and I can start making 3,500 a year. I mean, a 3,500 dollars a month, and that would lead me to being able to afford this particular car. And I'm saying this because I'm using the car as a reference point towards a material good that you can desire. Because there's nothing wrong with desiring a material good. It's just you need to be realistic. It's like doing magic for money, and you're in a position in your life where you're only generating about $1,000 a month, and this magic is intended to make you 1 million. Where exactly is that money going to come from? Now, if you are making $200,000 a year and you do magic to try to get 1 million, that might be possible. Now, if you're only making $1,000 a month, you can use magic to increase that. And then, because of the magic and because of your physical work, now you're making $2,000 a month. And then you can continue progressing until you're making $4,000 a month, right? And you can make these gradual steps forward, but you need to be realistic. And a big part of this is the idea behind it. When we attach our worth to these things, when these things don't work out, our sense of worth goes down. But from my perspective, I don't have a sense of worth because I don't care if I'm worthy or not. Whether I or you believe that I am worthy doesn't affect me in the slightest. And I think there's a big difference between what I'm saying and what the majority of other people saying, because some people recognize that developing a sense of worth based off what other people say is a trap, so they no longer see themselves in a way where they care how other people view them, but then they still care about how they view themselves. And if I was to say, oh, I am a worthless piece of shit right now, like, I don't give a shit. I am probably memeing at that point. Like, if I start talking about how shitty I am, I'm probably just memeing because I don't actually care about my worth. And I'm going so deep into this aspect because it's a part of unbecoming. And sometimes we recognize these practices and these realizations, and we say, I want to unmake myself so that I can become something new. But then when we rebuild ourselves, we keep all those old traps, like the sense of worth, the sense of permanence, which is a big one. Sometimes we desire safety, and we just don't want to accept that we live in a universe of complete chaos. And this idea of permanence is ridiculous. It's unmanageable, it's unsustainable. Everything is constantly in flux, constantly changing, and constantly developing into new things. And things are constantly being destroyed and remade, and new things are emerging. And this idea of permanence is something that just bogs us down, because when we develop the idea that something is permanent, when that comes crashing down, it absolutely devastates us. But if you go into it from the beginning understanding that nothing is permanent, nothing is absolute, and nothing possesses value within a vacuum, all of these things become undone, and all of these things that hold us prisoner just stop existing within our psyche, and we can truly be free. Because like, value is this big thing that a lot of us are stuck to. And the reality is that nothing has value within a vacuum. Like, all right, just bullshitting here. I have my little vape. I enjoy using my vape, right? Because whatever, maybe I have like an oral fixation, a inhalation fixation. I just want to be puffing on something, right? But within a vacuum, this thing means nothing. In a vacuum, when this is absolutely alone with nothing else around it, it no longer serves a purpose. Right now in my hands, I can take a puff. In a vacuum, nothing can puff it, meaning in existence means nothing. If you put this thing in a vacuum, whether it continues to exist or ceases to exist makes no difference. So when we look at value, we need to recognize that nothing possesses value within a vacuum. Therefore, everything's value is not determined by it itself, by its proximity to something else, by its um comparison to something else. So this would mean that things only have value in comparison to something else. We cannot say that something is good or that something is bad. We can only say that something is better or worse than something else for a particular reason, or within a particular context. So I can say that this vape is better than this vape because this one is empty, and an empty one can't be puffed on, and this one, which is full, can be puffed on. But in a vacuum, none of this shit matters. I can say that this practice is better at achieving that goal over that practice for reasons, right? So when we start dissecting all of these things, our concepts of value, our concepts around worth, our concepts around permanence, our concepts around um you get the gist, right? That's when you truly start unmaking yourself. And another big component of my philosophy or book on not necessarily a philosophy, but my method of unbecoming and unmaking the self and becoming the new self, is that when you recreate yourself and you become this new version of you, It's not permanent, it's not absolute. This is only who you are becoming for the time being, because it is ultimately beneficial for you within that particular bracket of time. But eventually, you'll have to unmake that person and become something new when you achieve newer heights, and you need to become something new to get to um, move forward in this new aspect of your life. And when you unmake yourself, you're not just you are destroying this old self of yours, but nothing is truly destroyed. Things are only transmuted and changed. So you're not necessarily destroying yourself, but you're reverse engineering yourself. So these old forms of yourself still exist. You destroyed your attachment to it, but it still exists. So as you destroy and recreate yourself, these old versions of yourself are still there, and you can put down this new self and pick up an old self when it becomes useful again. Thus, you develop this idea of modality shifting, which is present in chaos magic, and you can start becoming a chameleon and becoming who you need to be in any given moment. Somebody once told me that a lot of people look at the yin yang symbol and they imagine themselves being the yin side or the yang side, or this perfect blend of the two. And the yin yang symbol, when applied to the self, you were never meant to be yin or yang or a mixture of the two. You're meant to dance on the line in between the two. You're meant to just move in between them and wear yang as a coat when it's necessary, and toss it to the side and wear yang as a coat when it's necessary. Whenever one benefits you more, or whenever there's a reason to put this on for a particular, because it has utility within the context of what's happening in that moment, you wear it, you discard it, you pick it back up when it's necessary again. So this is what my book Omniablagio. If you can't spell that or pronounce that, just look up my books um, um, based off of the author name, which is Anthony Williams Figueroa. So Anthony Williams Figueroa is the author name, and you'll see all of my books. I have a decent book on Kabbalah and Omniablagio and a few other things around, right? On Kindle. So, yeah. Okay. So ultimately, this idea of divine darkness ties in very well to my philosophy. Now, if you were to use my method for the purpose of divine darkness, what you would do is strip yourself, unmake yourself, destroy all these components of the self and all of these things that you're attached to when it comes to your narrative, and then not recreate yourself. You would strip yourself until you're practically nothing and then remain there. But personally, I don't see that as having utility if you're trying to continue existing. This would probably be something you should do at the ends of your life, and not by choice. I'm talking you are now 80, 90 years old, you're literally on your deathbed, you already know the method. You should start unmaking yourself so that when the day comes and you start seeing those things and it's like, oh, it's time, I'm about to leave this world, you're not attached to anything involving the self. And that leads into one of my, I guess it's a maxim or a saying or whatever you want to call it. Live as if you'll never die and die as if you never lived. A big problem with dying and why it's scary, this death fear, this death anxiety that people get, is because this idea of losing the self. It's I am this person, I am like that, and I'm about to lose all of that. And depending on your ideas of afterlife, some of you might believe that this persona is going to persist after death. But if it does, then this means you are not um, entering into this nothingness state, this oneness with God. Ultimately, you are returning to samsara. You are being reborn. You are going into reincarnation. And this reincarnation might be you being reborn on Earth as another human, or it might be that you are being reborn in some other type of existence. So these ideas of heavens and hells and other types of afterlives, these are all still reincarnation. They are just not a physical reincarnation. They are a reincarnation into another reality, dimension, other way of existence. But the true liberation, true nirvana, is reintegrating, entering the true oneness, the supreme, unmanifested, and simply ceasing to be. Perhaps for eternity, perhaps not. We don't know if that is something that is eternal. Um, but right, guys, I have to end this. I would love to continue talking, but I don't know if you guys are interested in such long form videos. And I've already been talking for an hour and 20 minutes on top of my first video, which was half an hour. So if you're watching both of them fully, I commend you. Thank you so much for listening to me yap for almost 2 hours. And I really hope that that what I talked about here actually did something for you, that you learned something, that you picked up on some things, old and new, things from these people and practices that I was talking about, and also things that I added from my own particular philosophy and way of being. But if you listen to the first video in its entirety and this video in its entirety, then obviously you saw something valuable here. And I want to thank you for that because I love talking about this subject. And if you truly got something out of this, I feel like I did something right. So that's awesome. Thank you for being here with me for this long. And please don't be shy. Leave a comment. Talk about how you felt or what you thought or what you believe on any of the topics that I've mentioned. Um, if you like this, leave a like, subscribe so you can see my future videos. And my biggest desire is for you to engage, to leave comments. And I will definitely be able to reply because, this is a new channel. There aren't that many comments here. So I would definitely be able to give you a full answer to any questions or dive deeper into any topics. And if the question is something that can be turned into a video, I'll make an entire video on the subject. going deeper into the weeds and the minutia of things. But again, thank you guys for being here for so long with me. And I think I'm gonna leave this off on that quote that of mine that I was saying. Live like you'll never die, and die like you never lived is one of the best ways to live because it's so peaceful. You know. So, all right, guys, peace out. There's nothing much else for me to say here besides deuces.